Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Music Podcast. Once again, thank you so much to my return visitors and my subscribers. I can't do it without you. I love you guys. Thank you so much. If you're not a subscriber, please consider hitting that button so I can bring you great guests like Chris Caffrey. Chris, known around the world to so many fans for his guitar skills in Savatage, of course, classic metal band, but also one of the original members of Trans-Siberian Orchestra, one of the most amazing shows you'll ever see in your life. Over the years, Chris has also given us some band projects like Dr. Butcher, Spirits of Fire, and a whole bunch more, and a solo career. And speaking of that solo career, Chris is about to unleash a 2 CD, 21-song compilation from the solo career. The album's called 20 Years of the Music Man. It gets released on June 13th on Metalville Records. Chris, man, it is great to have you.
No, it's great to be here, and it's great to celebrate that release of that music. I mean, I started doing my solo stuff when Savatage had stopped really playing. That was kind of where I came about releasing it. And the 20 years of Music Man, that's the music that I recorded in that 20-year period, and it was fun picking it. I had a single that I recorded last year that's on the record called "Do You See What I See Now," and I
Mm-hmm.
had released a couple singles recently, and I was trying to think of if I wanted to do that or if I wanted to place it on an album. And I had the idea of maybe doing a 20th anniversary of my CD about war, which was called Warped. That I had actually changed the title to Warped. It was originally called Goddamn War, but because of the TSO audience and being out on the road with that, I didn't want to have me being in the autograph lines with TSO and have people walking up the line and standing next to people who had just came from church that day or going to church the next day, and holding that title in with my name with that. I kind of wanted to just show the respect to that audience and to Paul that way, and not and not have that glitch even be mentioned, because it's not like I was swearing. It was just kind of, when I said that, it was funny. The title track for that original version of the record being Goddamn War was, war itself was kind of patting itself on the back and being cocky about how successful it was being, tearing things apart. So it was basically going, God damn, more like, he was happy about it more, even so than, the other meaning of people being tired of it. And of course, war continues. But I went to the label about it, and at first they were like, well, that would need to be a double LP, because I wanted to have an LP release. And they said, well, how about you just have the record and maybe find some unreleased tracks and songs like Mayday, and try to make, maybe if you record a couple more things. I said, well, let me get back to you. And I tried to assemble the unreleased thing, which the songs are on here. When you have I Miss You Sometimes and Last Time, and Then She's Gone, were all, those were pretty much unreleased songs. And when I put them together with the other songs they wanted to do, I really didn't like the feel of it as a single record. I was kind of like, well, this is okay, but I'd rather go back to releasing that song as a single and not have to deal with people trying to figure out exactly what it was I was doing with these unreleased tracks. And then I kind of started thinking about things, and I was going, well, if I was to release some stuff again, a song like Pisses Me Off and a song like Music Man, they always keep getting played. And I figured that, maybe there's a part of my audience that hasn't heard it, or the audience that's coming to see TS over here that's new. I mean, there's a, when I stand up there and ask people who've seen us before, usually half the crowd hasn't. And that's pretty amazing after, 26 years of being on the road. And then, of course, getting back out with Savatage again, people that had not, seen us in decades, and new fans, and ones that weren't really familiar with my solo career. So I started piecing together the idea, and that's where I came up with the 20 Years of Music Man. And of course, it went to being 2 records. And I wound up getting that anyway. But the way it got structured, I really liked, because my original solo record was called Faces. I'd written around 70 songs at that time, and I recorded about 30, and there was a lot of different types of things. So I wanted to have something that really kind of would let people go through these last 20 years and get a good version of me musically and personally through the music and the lyrics. And I was really happy with how it pieced together and came out. I mean, it's going to be vinyl. The vinyl's a little bit less songs than the CD because you can only fit so many. But the way the vinyl structure is actually really cool because the first one's pretty heavy, and then the second one has a start to the first side to where it is a little bit more of the musical side. So it separates it, and it's a really neat ride. But the music itself, I think, is a good representation of me and what it is I did for the last 20 years when I was doing my solo stuff.
It's great, man. I mean, it's so cool to have this collection of the solo stuff because you do so much. I mean, there's so many different things that you do, and to have it all, kind of encapsulated in this record is really cool. You mentioned "Goddamn War," and I think about Striper. I had Michael on, Michael Sweet, and we talked about their record. It was a big deal at the time, and it was "Goddamn Evil." So for Striper, they're a big Christian following. For them to do "Goddamn Evil" as a record title was really something he had to deal with. So there was kind of the same thing. When you do that, the meaning he had behind it was similar to yours. God damning evil, not
Yeah,
liking
exactly.
evil, but people just don't hear that.
Yeah, that's
Uh,
where I caught on to that. I had my multiple meanings, and I just wanted to avoid giving Paul or TSO anything to worry about with it.
yeah,
It's like
yeah,
so I just played the safe route and called it warped, and it worked out that way. But if I was to release it again now that the COVID kind of removed the signing lines from that situation, and it wasn't like
mhm,
where you'd be exposed with a lot of your stuff in front of everybody. I thought it would have been fun, but maybe
yeah,
sometime, maybe I would do a digital version of that record with the different kind of, some animated stuff and some,
yeah,
different covers to singles, and that's something that can happen in the future. But I also wanted people to be able to get a hold of an LP. So many people were collecting them now, and we just re-released all the Savatage records again on LP, and I had the Spirits of Fire records come out on LP, and everybody really enjoyed getting a hold of them. And I'm like, well, I have no LP of any of my stuff. So
right.
this is a good way for them to get it without having to buy eight different ones, and it puts the music
It's
on one
really cool.
package of two LPs.
It is. It's really great, man. And I'm reading 2004, you had Faces, the debut. Um, I read in the press release a quote from you. It says it was a time when I had a lot of questions, not only about myself, but where certain parts of my life were heading. So I guess my question, take me back to that time. What were the questions you had, and what where was your head space at that time? Going into a solo career, and how did Faces help you?
Well, I mean, I had lived in the house in New York City that, was kind of the Savatage band house, and it became, Savatage TSO band house once we started working with that. But, I was there in the city in Astoria, Queens for almost 15 years. And, once Savatage had really slowed down and I didn't have a definitive time of when it was going to be playing again, we were touring a lot at that time. We were doing every single year, and maybe even 2 years after, like Wake of Magellan, we toured the year after we did it, and with Poets of Madmen, we toured in 2001 and some in 2002 after 9/11, and it was just kind of like, all of a sudden, this part of my life that wasn't TSO, because TSO was only doing the winter at that time, was gone. So I'm like, well, how do I, you know, productively fill this without separating myself from where I am? Because, I was getting offers from some pretty big bands at that time. As you know, it's like Savatage was headlining a lot of festivals all over the world at that time. We were pretty big, so bands were coming to me that unfortunately would have taken me away from TSO if I took the offers to be in that band.
Yeah.
And I didn't want to leave the family there. I had always believed in Paul, and I knew, just how solid that was and how long the longevity that could be. And I'm like, well, I don't want to leave the people I've been working with for over a decade for people that I don't know, situations that I don't know. So I was trying to find myself, and I started doing some writing, and then I had gotten Pro Tools, and in the midst of that, I was selling, letting people use some of my song ideas, and the melodies weren't on them, and some of the melodies got put on the songs were similar to the ones that I would have written myself. So I'm like, let me just try to scratch down some vocals. And then once I did that, I was like, well, my voice isn't that bad. I always wanted to sing. I just was brought up in a time when Coverdale and Dickinson and Halford and Jeff Tate and Steve Perry and you had Steve Walsh, you had all these vocalists that were so unbelievable, and that's kind of where when you were looking for singers, the bar was set so high,
Yeah.
unless you were going to be a little bit more of a character or more animated, like somebody like a Lemmy or something like that,
Right.
where your voice was an instrument. You needed to sing, and I don't think my brother and the people in my band thought I was that good at the time, so I kind of got discouraged from it. I would sing a lot behind closed doors. I would put on Foreigner records and,
Mhm.
Blue Murder albums and things like that, and just sing to these things that I know I could hit the notes, but I kind of walked away from it. But once I started recording it on Pro Tools, I was like, well, I'm not that bad. And actually, the song Music Man was like the first time I finished a song with these harmonies on it. And when I was done with that song, I actually started crying because it was kind of like I wanted to do that for so
Uh-huh.
long. And I finally realized that I could have. So it was a really good feeling being able to do that. So I managed to get myself a record deal with the Greek label, and I was able to put my energy towards that at the time, and go into that period of waiting. I talked to Zach and I talked to John, and they had wanted me to do stuff with Circle to Circle in their band. I would talk to
Mhm.
Paul about it, and Paul would always say, we're going to do a Savatage record. So I was like, okay, there's going to be this period of time that we're going to be waiting. It just wound up being a little bit longer than I thought. I mean, we never broke up, and in the midst of that time, that 20-year period, because the last song was finished in 2024. So between 2004 and 2024, that's where the 20 years of the Music Man is. I'd written, recorded, and released over 8 solo records, and I made a lot of music, and it was fun for me to be able to create and leave my own little part of history that way.
Mhm.
I missed being in Savatage, and when I got back out with my band and my brothers in that band, and we got out on the stage again, it was just like everything kind of made sense. It was like you waited for a reason.
Yeah.
It was that's it was going to happen. It was supposed to happen, and it did. And then, all that stuff that I created in the meantime, and all the emotions in that came out. But it was, very, very peaceful for me
That's
to
great.
go and play those shows again. And there's a lot of me, which is this big gap between, you know, being Chris Caffrey, the person that has his yards and gardens, and Chris Caffrey, the person that's on stage with Trans-Siberian Orchestra. The person in the middle was kind of this heavy metal musician that loved to run around the world and make his neck hurt playing heavy metal. And it's like I had my opportunities to do it with bands like Doro and
Yeah.
with Metal Church and other things. I toured with Ripper and stuff, but at the end of the day, I really missed Savatage, and I just kept waiting. And I blinked my eyes, and 20 years went by, and then finally last year they called us up and asked us if we wanted to play, and I was like, again almost started crying. It was just like, yeah, of course. So,
It's so
and
cool.
that's where this record's coming out now, and just showing everybody kind of like a good idea of what it was I did the last 20 years. So,
And it's so cool. And the Sabotage, such a great story. Just the on again, off again thing, and it transforming into Trans-Siberian kind of thing. And it just, and now back again. It never, not really back, it never left, but it's just hanging on, and it's always quality, and it's just it's really, because I grew up with Savatage, so it's I never let go, and neither did you, and that's cool to
and
see.
neither did the fans, and then more and more fans kept grabbing on. I was always getting emails and letters from people online, and about how much they liked the band, and they were a lot of times people that had never saw us. I was teaching guitar lessons to a kid that I believe's in a Chicago area Savatage cover band, that it was a teenager that was not alive when we were last playing, and his biggest influence on guitar was Chris Oliva, kind of like mine, and it was just cool that band and that music had that longevity. Paul and the Oliva brothers, they created something really special with that music. And Paul would always say to me that it he would say anybody could write a song about a car or a girl, but it takes something really special to write a song that changes someone's life. And that's what Paul had did with his lyrics. And I realized that when Savatage went on the road and people started telling me that, Savatage either changed their life or saved their life, and there was something really special about Paul as a lyricist and a producer that just brought that music together, and just expanded it to I consider it to be like a heavy metal Queen, in the way that Freddie Mercury was able to attach just him alone to a football stadium. Paul made that possible through his lyrics with Savatage and with TSO.
Yeah, yeah. Really a special human being, no doubt. Huge part of that Sabotage legacy, of course. We'll miss him. I know you do, and we all do. You mentioned Queen elements. My Light on this record. It just, I hear so much Queen in that song, and I've always wondered, was that your tribute, your homage to Queen, or did it just happen that way? Was it intentional, that Queen sound? Do
It's
you hear it?
always it's the yeah, I get that. It's the
Okay.
influence that I had in me, and you would hear Crosby, Stills, and Nash, and you would hear those layered background vocals. But for me, Queen was like, I think it was News of the World was one of the first LPs that I'd own. It was definitely one of the first 10, and you would just hear those background vocals, and you would, as I got more and more into that, it was just that element of the way that they connected the classical and the rock with the vocals, and it's kind of the way when Paul and John first did Chance. It was just like, wow, that really big element, came together with those vocals, and that has always been a big influence inside of me through that music and a lot of the stuff I listened to as a kid. I love the artistic side of things, and like again, that's another song that never, it was just released as a bonus track on a Metalville anniversary record that they had, so that hasn't come out. So it's funny because when I found the songs to piece this together, there is a pretty decent amount of songs that were never really either released on the individual albums or released, outside of singles. So
Yeah.
if something like Mayday, something like well, Last Time was unreleased, you
Hmm.
know, I Miss You Sometimes is unreleased. She's Gone is unreleased, and then Fright Nights was only on the Mold EP, one of the first EPs that came out, and the Forever Will Be song was another one that was on the Music Man EP. So there was a lot of little pieces of things that didn't get a chance to be gathered together on the records. But I also made sure I put in Abandon, and I had Edge of Darkness, and I threw in Seasons Change, and I put in
Yeah.
the Heaven Is Real song, which really has a pretty deep meaning to me, because when I was on the road once with TSO in Canada, I actually had a anaphylactic seizure and had
Ooh.
stopped breathing. And that song was written about my experience with what I remember from going the other side. It's kind of crazy. So, and then that one always, I spent a whole night trying to piece together what would be the missing elements, and I had a list of about 30 songs, and I was like, all right, I got to narrow this down. And I just kind of weighed it out, and then when I did the CD order, I just kind of pushed it all together into something that I thought was a really good flow. And it goes through my sarcastic side and my metal side and my
Mhm.
more melodic acoustic side, and there's instrumentals, and there's stuff that falls into the seasonal kind of thing that we did with TSO in that mood, and there's ballads, and there's just a little bit of everything in there. And I think if you sit down and go from beginning to end, especially on the CD version, it really gives a pretty neat ride through my 20 years.
It definitely is, man. That's like I say, it's so diverse. There's so much to listen to and absorb here. It's really, really cool. Do you see yourself doing more solo stuff?
I mean, I'd like to. The one main thing now is that I'm kind of just taking things day by day, and my priority out of the gate is going to be Savatage, which is where I always wanted it to be. So, whatever Savatage has going on at the time, I mean, I don't want to be writing for myself and make it sound exactly like what it is that we're doing with Savatage. I mean, the plan is to do a record, so I'm kind of waiting on the plans there. I think I'm going to have a really good base inside of myself to start writing again, because I think that I can open up and really create some stuff now with a clear head, knowing that I'm not trying to replace Savatage in any way, shape,
Right.
or form with my music. I'm just going to be able to make myself, and that's something that I'm really going to have fun with the next time I go to write. I'm really anxious. I'm waiting till July, once I'm done with all this stuff, and once I get a chance to get the signed CDs and LPs out, because I always let people order CDs through my site so I can put their name on it and sign them and send it to them. That's something I've personally done since I started doing my solo stuff, because not everybody gets a chance to see you all the time, but
Mhm.
it's something I like to do. But unfortunately, my release date is while I'm in Europe, so it's kind of something, the mailing of them has to wait till I get back.
Right.
So it's a little bit difficult for me to finish that now. So once I get out of here, I think maybe I might get copies in my hand right before I leave, which means I can get a jump start on signing them and packaging them. But I can't mail them until unless I was to get somebody to go inside my house and find
Right.
have them locked up and send them out. They're gonna have to wait till I leave. But once that smoke clears from the Savatage shows, and that all being done, then I think I'm gonna sit down in the rest of the summer and just try to write something once a week. That's kind of what I did when I did the Faces stuff. I would be in the house that I'm in right now, which was my family house that we've been in for 40 years, and it's my house now. But I would come up here on the weekends and help take care of the house for my mom. Then I would have a little digital recorder. Then I'd return to the city and piece together what it is that I wrote up here into finished songs there. And it was kind of one of these things where, I like writing complete pieces at one at a time, which is why I was into doing the singles recently, because I was able to put like an album's worth of attention onto a song like Mayday. There's a lot of vocal tracks, and this new song that I did that has Jeff Scott Soto singing with me, there's like 95 tracks on that record. You know, Derek did the keyboard battle guitar solo thing with me, and when I asked him to do it, I was so excited that he said yes, and he just kept sending me more keyboard tracks. So there's like tons of stereo different keyboard things, and there's lots of vocals and other stuff on the song. So it is my German Shepherd is demanding my time as I do this interview. But it's I know, but you're not gonna bother me now. He's like, this is my time. This is dinner time. It's walk time. What are you doing? It's been funny. He was really quiet for the beginning of when we were talking, but then he gets to be a little bit aggravated because he knows what time of the day it is. And as a shepherd, they do not allow you to go off their schedule.
Yep. I've had a few myself.
You can, but they're going to make sure they let you know. You're getting into their schedule. So, but yeah, so I want to do some writing. Then I still need to finish the video for that song with Soto, which is pretty much going to come out on the release day. I was so happy that he wanted to do that with me because he mentioned to me when we were doing the pay-per-view for TSO during COVID, he's like, how come you never have me sing on any of your solo stuff? Well, first of all, it's because I sang my solo stuff, but you know, I thought about it, and this song kind of had a couple characters, and the chorus of this song is the devil. You know, he's the puppet master over everybody, even the crazy world leaders. And I couldn't have Oliva, who was the original Mephistopheles on Beethoven's Last Night, do it because we were doing Savatage, but Jeff was the original Mephistopheles on the tour, and he was always good at that. So I said, hey, you want to try to sing this? And he did. So I'm excited for people to hear that song. Me and him are going to be putting in some video for that to go with the lyric video. I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to film myself and get that out there. The guy Wayne Joyner, who I've been working with on these lyric video things, is so good, and I've just been kind of upping them every time a little bit closer to actual video versions of the songs, and they're coming out really cool. So that'll be out, and then I really am excited for the metal fans that have been following me to get a chance to have that song, because that song has got a lot of the old Dr. Butcher style, you know, kind of heavy metal to it, and it's a pretty powerful song. You know, and with Soto, I just think if we get the video done really cool, it's going to be a cool listen and a cool ride for all the metal fans to have. So,
man, he's so great. Jeff's awesome. I always love hearing whatever he does, man. You know, he's been on a million times, and you know, it's always something
I like
different.
him because I love what he's doing now, and he just keeps building himself more and more. I looked at the next Monsters of Rock cruise, and it's funny because he has Soto on it.
Yeah, I know. I saw
Soto Ellefson and Solo Bueller. It's kind of like if you remember Gilligan's Island when they had Harold Hecuba on the island, and he was like doing all the different parts in that Hamlet, or it's kind of like when Bugs Bunny overtook his baseball team. It's like first base Bugs Bunny, second base Bugs Bunny. I enjoy that because he's such a great singer, and it's so funny with that because I thought his performance on Marching Out was one of the greatest freaking heavy metal vocal performances ever. So when I started to know him and work with him, I don't think he understood exactly how big of a fan I was to him. I held it back a lot, didn't really mention it all the time, but I was a huge Soto fan, man. He was a part of, you know, one of those records that's a part of the history of metal, kind of like, you know, in the way, if I look at my career, the way like the Butcher record is, or Gutter Ballet, when you're just in a piece of music that got into metal history as something that was really special to people. And he definitely was on one of them.
Marching Out was, I can't even explain what an impact that record had. You know, and there's the man himself right there. So
I watched him. I watched some of the live videos of him singing Journey. He was one of the best I'd ever heard doing that stuff.
Strong.
He just told me how, you know, difficult it was to be expected to do that 6 days a week with that range and everything in there. But he had that range, and that the performance he did of that I'd seen were freaking amazing. So
Yeah, man.
just
Yeah.
he's just
Not,
got Soto. So
yeah, he sure is. I want to respect your time. I know you got the dog and everything going on.
yeah, I'm
So,
throwing tiny little pieces of tiny little milk bones to him to distract him in different directions so he's not over talking.
I want to touch on a couple things though.
No problem.
High River sauces.
Yes.
You got, yeah, this is the classic original. Tears of the Sun, hot sauce, your own. And you got a partner in
Well, this was me and Steve Seabury started High River Sauces. It was
mhm.
his idea to get the company going. He had been kind of doing some management work for me on my solo career with around the time of I believe it was right around the it might have been Pins and Needles House of Insanity kind of time. And he had a metal tour that he had. I think it was called Metal Allegiance or something. He had a tour that he put on in the States. And in that tour, he had a hot sauce made at the merch stands. And he was having a meeting with his partner at the time. And I was meeting with a friend of mine. And we were actually just exchanging hot sauces, ironically, me and my friend that we had made. And Steve was like, "You make hot sauce? No way. I just did this sauce for this tour, and I was really thinking about making a sauce and starting a company." So I got him the recipe for Tears of the Sun, and he started High River, and that was over a decade ago, and it's just been really great because he didn't want to have my name on the hot sauce. TSO was
Yeah.
already headlining arenas at the time, but it wasn't like he didn't want to make it to where I was selling me as a hot sauce maker. He wanted to get the credibility in the food world, and he was smart because now, he's built the company. We have distribution in a lot of the grocery stores I go in. He has a hot sauce expo that happens in New York. He has one that's in Chicago. He has
Yeah.
one that's in Portland. He has one in Nashville. I think he had one in Phoenix, but I'm not sure if that still goes on. I haven't seen his complete schedule for this year, but he's one of the hardest working people in the world. He has a hot pepper YouTube show that he's been putting out with Smoking Ed Curry, the guy that invented the Reaper pepper, and he just keeps busting his butt on it. So I have like
Great.
4 sauces in the company, and I have a lot of recipes that we're gonna probably do small batch releases of, and it's fun for me because it's another way of creating. It's just fun. The ironic part about the hot sauce world is I think the critics are worse in the hot sauce world than they are in the music world. I really do. I think that they
They're
people
tough, huh?
well, even not everybody can play music, everybody can listen to music, but everybody thinks they can cook.
Right, right,
It's
right.
that kind of thing. Everybody's a chef,
Yeah.
but everybody has a different taste bud too. So it's also kind of like the way people listen to music, though. Somebody may love heavy metal, but not love the heaviest metal.
Right, true.
So it's like it's kind of the same thing with that. So it was always fun to get stuff out there that would win awards, and it's a cool thing. I make sauces every year, and I have a bunch of recipes that I haven't used, and as time goes on, it's another part of my life and my world that's always fun to have attached to everything else that's going on.
I love it, man, and I love it. Is Chiba yours?
No, that's actually one of Steve's. I had
Okay,
the
I
grapes
like
of
it,
the
man.
wrath, and yeah, Chiba's one of Steve's. But yeah,
Yeah, yeah. There was, and it's cool. I mean, that company, it's so many different kinds. How many sauces does he have now? I mean, you have
uh,
four of your own, right?
yeah. I mean, he had some that were out, and I'm not sure if they're getting released again. And he's got a Peppers Up one now that is getting back onto the Hot One show. Tears, the hotter version of Tears, the Private Reserve, that wound up on Hot Ones, and that was really awesome to watch.
Hellacious.
Watch Paris Hilton eat the hot sauce, and some other people were on there on that
Mm.
episode. So it was fun. So
I love it, man.
Yeah.
Very cool. You've got a whole bunch of different things that you do, and one of them's playing polka music, which is really, really cool. I saw some clips, man, and I'm thinking to myself, I mean, it's not, it's the other end of the spectrum for you, right? But I mean, the the guy, is it Jimmy Sturr? Yeah, I mean, is
Jimmy's a legend. He's won 18
yep.
Grammys in 18 different years, and the only reason why he doesn't have the most Grammys ever is because the Grammy people knew he was going to, and they killed his category back around the year of
That's
2010. He would have passed over having the most ever by now, and he's a hard working guy, man. He's 83 years old now, and he never stops working, and he was kind of like a friend of a friend. It was actually Mark Scott, the drummer from Trickster, owned a restaurant around here, and I'd known Mark since he was a teenager. And he's like, "Hey, you got to meet Jimmy Sturr," and I did. And Jimmy's like, "Oh, you got to come out and check out a show." And then he's like, "Hey, why don't you come up and play a song?" And he's like, "Hey, you want to play my shows?" And it was fun. I mean, I go up as a guest. I rarely play the actual polka stuff with him, but I play with his orchestra that is freaking amazing. These guys are so talented, and we'll play casinos and big festivals for that type of music, whether it's Oktoberfest or whatever time of the year that he lines up with things that happen. And he's kind of like my dad in some ways. He only lives a few miles away, and he owns his own tour bus. And it was always fun because I was taking care of my own mom and staying around here, and I really wasn't on the road enough, but I was able to jump on the tour bus with him for a couple days and have fun and play that music, and
really
just
cool.
get a chance to do something with a guy that's on that level with his band, and there wasn't a lot of pressure on me at all. I was able to go there and do my stuff and sell my hot sauce and my solo records at the merch booth, and
Yeah.
just hang out and have fun. So right now I'm a little bit too busy to do his shows. There's some ones when I get back that I'm going to try to do before I head back out on the road. But I had to take a break from that to do the Savatage stuff.
Yeah, it's just crazy, 83 is and touring. I've got Dave Mason later in the week, and he's 79, I think now, and doing a full tour. I mean, you guys, man, you
Yeah,
musicians are something else, man.
yeah.
It's
Like I said, Jimmy owns his own.
wow,
He owns his own bus, and he hops in it and goes, and he just loves what he does. He loves
just
entertaining
awesome.
people. If he walks into a restaurant and takes him 15 minutes to walk out. It's like he stops and says hello to every table on the way out. And he was always proud of me being around him too and what I had accomplished. And he'd be like, "Hey, you ever heard of Trans-Siberian Orchestra?" And then next thing you know, it's like, "All right, we're not leaving the restaurant for another 15 minutes." But the story would follow a story, and he's just he's an entertainer.
Yeah, zest for life, man. That's great. That's awesome. All these stories and all this history. You ever think of writing it down? Do you keep a journal or anything? You ever think of writing a book of your experiences, or autobiography of sort?
When people ask me that, I found that hopefully the electronics don't die and the internet doesn't die, but I've been kind of on my Instagram page, I've been getting old pictures and things and doing posts that are kind of my own throwbacks. In the midst of that, it's kind of been organizing my ideas and my experiences that way. I don't keep a journal. I'm so bad at that. I mean, I could sit down and do it. I have a really pretty decent memory of a lot of things. If I would actually need to sit down and kind of do it year at a time, because there's actually some years that I'm like, what happened in this year? And you have to literally sit back and kind of think of what you did for 6 months of a time where but that's why, like I said, it's a positive thing to have the ability to categorize that stuff. And we had a different world. We used to travel around with cameras and rolls of film, and if you took 24 pictures, you'd be lucky if you got four that you liked. It's not
Yep.
like now where you take 100 pictures and find one of them. the different world, and they're all time stamped and it's to where you were when you took it and what you were doing. I mean, back then you didn't even know. I probably have rolls of film that I took that never were developed. They're probably ruined by now, but there's probably memories inside of them that I can't even get back, you know.
Wow. Wow. Yeah, I'm a photographer. I'm a concert photographer. So, I relate with that. Uh, shot a lot of film back in the day, and boy, oh boy, am I glad for digital. But out of all the music you've done, is there something you're most proud of? Big Mouth, right? Of course.
That
But
was it was funny because when I got off the Mountain King tour,
it's still
Atlantic
New
Records,
York, man.
Atlantic really liked me. You know, they were like, we've got this guy and we're gonna use him for things. So it was kind of like they had me in that, put me in Dirty Looks, and it was kind of one of these things where you know I got called in to do a video and some recording on a song, and
Hmm.
I got enough money to put a down payment on a car. It was kind of fun, but you know,
Yeah.
wasn't anything that you know, it's not a bad part of my history. It's just a different part of my history. So it's kind of
Yeah.
the video for the song Big Mouth is actually really funny if
It's
everybody gets
great.
to see it. It's that it was or directed by the guy who directed the DJ Jazzy Jeff and the Fresh Prince videos back then. So it had a really funny style to it. But I mean, if I would have to pick something that I'm most proud of, I mean, there's a few high points. You know, I can name three directly, and that would be the Butcher record, the Metallium record, and Faces and the goddamn War record together. Like those three pieces of the history that I released, I think are pretty cool to me. You know, the Metallium record is something that's a really special metal record. It's one that first Metallium record's something that's pretty special. It's a great album. I mean, you listen top to bottom of that. That's a freaking strong metal record. It really is.
Yeah, that's great to hear, man. I love when an artist looks back and is proud of what they've done, man.
Yeah, but it's not even just
Great.
that. It's like I get people that, you know, are power metal fans and European power metal fans that will tell me that they consider that record to be like, you know, one of the sacred orbs of that kind of music. You know, it was like really special. And the Butcher record is it speaks for itself. You know, it was
Mhm.
like
Yeah.
it's just a really classic old school John Oliva. Me and him just writing some pretty obnoxious and some pretty heavy metal together. So that did, and like I said with Faces and Goddamn More, that was just a really big culmination of a lot of me that popped out at once. You know, it was a ton of songs done in a short period of time, but there was some really cool stuff there.
That's great, man. You mentioned John. John's good. Is he? I know he's going through some stuff right now, health wise, and but I also heard recently. I think it was in April. He's ready to do the record. He wants to do the Sabotage record.
Yeah,
So
he's had a lot of punches. You know, he's lost so many people that are close to him.
yeah,
You know, so many people have passed away around John, and he's the Mountain King, man.
yeah, man.
You know, he had a fall, and then he's had some
Yeah,
health
it's,
stuff, and he has his MS that he's dealing with,
yeah,
and some other things. But you know, I saw him go from being in a wheel in a wheelchair, a motorized wheelchair, and you know, being with walkers to watching him walking in and out of the studio when we were rehearsing for the South American tour, and then I just saw videos of him and pictures online from a ceremony that happened for Morris Sound Studios in Florida, and he looked even, you know, better than he did when I saw him a month ago. So I think the Sabotage thing playing is an inspiration to him. I think it's the best thing that could have happened to all of us in a lot of different ways. But I think John, you know, he wants to be there. I want him to be there. I was like, dude, I've never done a Sabotage show without you. He was like, just go play the fucking music, you know, and it's so important to me that he's around and you know he had a big part to do with what we were doing and he recorded that piece for the video. But I know John, he wants to be there, and I think that seeing just how much people missed him and his music and the legacy of the band, it's inspiring him to get back out there and walk up on that stage and
Yeah.
have people freaking say hi to him the way he deserves. So
Yeah. I hope to see that for sure. You're out on the road. You're in Europe. You going to be coming to the States with the Sabotage lineup?
the idea is for us to play as many places as we can. I don't have
Cool.
schedules in front of me. Like I said, I'm taking things day at a time, but from what I understand, the plan is for us to go, and we're looking at a 10-year plan, and it's going to include everywhere. That's the idea. So we'll get there, and I think the States will be a lot of fun to get back out and tour around with this band again.
It's just so awesome, man. Chris, I can't thank you enough, man. Such an honor to talk to you. ChrisCaffrey.com, 20 Years of the Music Man gets released June 13th on Metalville. Thank you so much for taking the time, man.
Thanks for having me, man. It was a lot of fun to talk to you, and my dog settled down, so he's lying right next to my foot now, waiting. But
What a great dude, man. That's
yeah.
cool. Chris,
All right,
love you, man.
thank
Thank
you
you so
again.
much, man. Thank you.
I'm gonna take him out now, cause right, doggy.
Thanks for waiting, man.